And we will probably wait until a little bit after 11 o'clock just to wait as people start coming in.
Yeah, whenever you are ready.
Okay. Okay, Keith, I think we'll get started in the interest of time and everyone. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning for the H2B visas for the next season, learning more about staffing solutions. I'd like to introduce Keith Pabian. He is the founding partner of Pabian Law, a national hospitality immigration firm that specializes in H2B visas and year-round immigration options. Keith is also the co-founder and CEO of Seasonal Connect, a staffing and operational solution for seasonal organizations across the country. Keith has a unique specialization in working with hospitality organizations from coast to coast with H2B visa petitions. Keith regularly presents at conferences on immigration topics affecting hospitality organizations and has received numerous awards for his success in providing solutions for employers' most pressing staffing issues. Keith graduated from Union College and Villanova University School of Law. He has years of experience in the hospitality industry through his work at Seasonal Connect and Pabian Law. He lives in Massachusetts with his wife, 2 sons, 6 chickens, and 3 ducks. We are going to be recording this, and we will ask that you keep your questions until the end of the session here. We will leave plenty of time for Q&A. And with that, Keith, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Carmen. So Carmen approached me. I was speaking at the tourism conference in January and asked if I would do this webinar for the Tourism Coalition. I was very honored. As Carmen was saying, we are based in the Boston area, but we work with a lot of clients in the Dakotas. So some of the nicest people that I have ever worked with, and I'm just so grateful to be able to continue to talk to all of you. So what I'm going to do is, everyone, thank you so much for coming today. I know we are now in the busy season for you, but the reason why today's conversation is so topical and so important is we're only 3 months away from starting work on summer 2027 H2Bs. So your seasons are so short and so condensed and so absolutely crazy. So having this foundation today and starting to think about next year already, as obnoxious as that sounds, is so important to make sure that you're able to look at this solution. All right, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about H2B visa basics for any of you that might be new to the program or need a refresher. We'll talk about trends. As part of that, I'm also going to talk about advocacy because I know that's a big part of what this association does. I'm going to talk about why H2Bs are so important in today's immigration climate. We'll touch on compliance. I'll give you a roadmap for the year ahead. And as Carmen said, we'll leave some time for Q&A. Tons of content, but we will get through all of this. All right. So let's start with the basics. So what I want to just have in the forefront of your mind as we're talking today, and you're going to hear me talking about this a number of times over the next hour, is in today's immigration and political environment, H2B visas are one of the only immigration options that are available to the hospitality and tourism industries that this administration supports. And so as we're looking at this, and as we're talking about the pros and cons and all of that, have this in your head that this is a safe option over the next 2.5 years, because you're going to hear me talk a little bit later about how many things are going away and have already gone away. All right, so what is the H2B visa? It is a seasonal visa that was created for seasonal businesses. Okay, so when this was written into law, the idea was that seasonal businesses could get workers to come work for them during the duration of time that they're busy. Now, you can see on this slide that you can apply for up to 10 months. But in reality, what you apply for is the busy time of year for you. So if you're really busy, let's say from May through October, that would be the period of time that we ask for. Okay. You apply every year. And what I've seen over the past many years, especially since before, during, and since COVID, is that us going through this every year really allows our clients and organizations to staff appropriately for what their current needs are, right? You get to take this step back and say, where are we struggling with staffing? What holes do we have to fill? And we go from there. One of the really critical things to understand as you're trying to wrap your head around H2B visas is that to the federal government that administers this program, it's really not about the people that you're hiring. Instead, it's about the jobs that you need filled. And so as a result of that, when we're going through this process, we're actually applying the way that we go through the application process is based on the roles that you're trying to fill. And those roles have to be actual roles at your organization. So let's say that you need line cooks and housekeepers. We're not asking for the people who are going to fill those roles for the vast majority of the process. Instead, we actually apply for housekeepers and line cooks in the applications, and the people come in at the very end. One of the things that's very unique about H2Bs compared to other immigration routes is that you as the employer get to set the requirements. So if you need people that have fast-paced dining experience, you can apply for that. If they need to have a background in tourism, you can apply for that. But you get to set the requirements, and as a result of that, you also get to bring people in who have experience. So these are not entry-level kids. These are people that are really oftentimes experienced and can come in and really hit the ground running. At the end of the process, you can always transfer people from winter properties. You still have to go through the whole process, but you can transfer them. We'll talk about whether you can bring them from outside the country. All right. And then one of the big changes over the last couple of years in a positive way is now every country is eligible for H2B visas. All right. So why is this program so popular? And you'll see in a little bit that it is more popular than it has ever been in the history of the program. You can get them for longer seasons, including for the shoulder seasons, to get your property ready and then to close it up at the end of the season. The workers want to work, they're experienced, they have experience in what you're trying to do at your organization. They have the ability to return for future seasons, which is huge because you can have continuity and not have to train people each year. You can have the ability to grow them into supervisory and managerial roles. Now, you need to file separate petitions for supervisors and managers, but you can have continuity of staff and have paths for progression as you go through. And then you'll see on the bottom thing, when we talk about some of the immigration changes, the ability to keep people in the United States and bypass some of the issues of getting people here is really big. And it solves a lot of the hurdles, or gets you over a lot of the hurdles that might be in place with getting people from outside the country. Where we see this program used, it really depends on what your specific needs are, because you should always apply for what your needs are. But we see a lot of food and beverage, we see cashiers, we see front desk, a ton of cleaning roles, supervisors and managers. It's really wherever you're feeling like you're pinched and you need to solve some staffing opportunities. All right. In terms of seasonality, I led with this, right? It's a seasonal visa, so you have to prove seasonality. But you heard me say this, you can be seasonal for up to 10 months. So we just need to show that for at least 2 months of the year, your revenues, your expenses, your staffing figures go down. And even if you have a set number of people year round, even if you've been using contract labor or using a ton of overtime, that can be another basis to prove that you're seasonal. What I have found is when we work with our South Dakota clients, almost all of you, frankly, every organization that we've worked with in South Dakota that falls into the tourism industry has been able to show seasonality. So for purposes of this webinar, let's assume you're all seasonal, because I bet you are, but it's something that I can always talk to you individually about to confirm. Okay. Now, a lot of you might have experience with J1 visas. And what I would tell you is a lot of our clients use both. We're going to talk about the J1 program later because the program is in some trouble right now. But even if the program were going smoothly, it's still, the H2B visa is still different in that the J1 visas, the way that most of you use them is for the 3 to 4 month work and travel program, which means you get them for the heart of your season, but they're gone for the shoulder seasons. And by definition, the J1 visa holders are usually entry level because they're kids who have just recently graduated. On the other side of things, the H2B visas, as I said before, they're experienced workers that can work longer seasons. So again, a lot of our clients use both, but they are very different programs. One of the other things to also differentiate, and I'm going to talk about costs in a little bit, is that the H2Bs are an employer expense. So it is going to add money to your budget because you do have to pay for it. Historically, a lot of the J1 visa holders have paid their way, so it's not adding extra cost to you, although that has started to shift as the program is going through a lot of issues right now. And again, I'll talk more about that. Okay, so in terms of understanding the H2B visa process, okay, so we have the basics, right? Seasonal visa, you get to apply every year and take that look in the mirror and see where your struggles are and where you need to fill the holes. One of the most important things, though, in understanding the process is understanding just how we get through this thing. Now, one of the things that I wanted to flag here, because it's one of the biggest mistakes that I see made by seasonal employers, is you have to go through the process that I'm about to outline for you. H2B visa workers can never, ever, ever, ever work second jobs or concurrent jobs. It is impossible. It's not allowed. Every H2B worker needs to be working for the employer that actually sponsored them and goes through that process that we're about to go through. We are living in a very, very punitive environment where the government is looking to make examples of organizations and of people, and they are making it very scary for everyone in terms of if they find out that people are working in illegal situations, they are taking really heavy-handed measures. Do not put yourself in this situation. Do not put your organization in this situation, and do not put the workers in this situation. The workers can only work for the organization that sponsored them. There is no such thing as an H2B second job. Where it gets confusing is J1 visa holders oftentimes have more flexibility with that. They still need to talk to their program sponsor, to the agency, to make sure they can. But H2B visas and J1s are very different, and you need to be careful about this. So in terms of understanding the process, this is probably the most important slide on this entire webinar, because if you meet these dates, I always say we can get you the rest of the way. But most of you fall into the summer season right here, into the, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to do that. Most of you fall into the start dates that fall between April and September, right? Most of you have your season start April, May, June. And so we start at our office, we start work on those petitions in mid-September. Although we are already doing a ton of planning work. I already had 3 planning calls this morning with clients talking about the summer 2027 season. So we are there. Again, the substantive work starts in mid-September, but a lot of the planning happens over the summer. Now, that is obnoxious, right? I said that to you at the beginning, that it is crazy that we're already talking about 2027 when you're really just kicking off your seasons in earnest now. The reason why we start so early, though, is that the process, the petition process itself, is a multi-step process where we need to build on each step that happens prior to the one that we're on now. And there's multiple applications within the process, and each application needs to be approved or come back to us before we can move on to the next step. Also, in the midst of all of this step right here, filing the application with the U.S. Department of Labor, for all intents and purposes, we need to file that 90 days before your start date. Okay, so it is a very rigid deadline. Now, theoretically, we actually have 2 weeks. The real rule says that we have to file 90 to 75 days before your start date, but we need to file on the first day possible because there's, for some of you, a lottery system depending on your start date. For all of you, there are government delays that I'm going to cover. And the purpose of doing this is you need people for your start date so that you can actually service your guests and your customers. And so we need to make sure that we're doing this. And again, we can't file that application until we have another application back. Long story short, we have to start in that mid-September timeframe to make this work. And I just encourage you, whether you use H2Bs now or you're considering it, that mid-September timeline is crucial to make sure that you're successful with this program. Okay. In terms of the requirements, I always bring up this first bullet point first because it's kind of the easiest way to move forward. And it's kind of the most important one here. The rules say that you have to treat your seasonal Americans and your H2B workers that are working in the same roles the same. So once they come to the property, as long as you're treating them in the same way and paying them in the same way and offering them the same benefits and so on, you're going to be complying with most of the rules. Kind of diving in a little bit further though, there is this prevailing wage requirement where you have to pay, you have to apply to the U.S. Department of Labor for them to issue this wage. And what the prevailing wage is it's the average wage paid to people in your geographic area to do that job. What I will tell you is almost all of you, if not all of you, are probably already paying above that just because so many of you had to up your wages over the last 6 years. But also we can look up the prevailing wage ahead of time. So there's a lot of predictability here. Also, what the real rule says is that you have to pay the higher of the prevailing wage or the actual wage. So if the prevailing wage comes back at $10 an hour, but you start people in that role at $15 an hour, the minimum wage for H2Bs in that role becomes $15 an hour because that's your actual wage. All right, now you need to make sure that you're applying for at least 35 hours per week. Overtime is just fine, but 35 hours is the minimum. You don't want to move forward with H2Bs or with a higher number of people in H2Bs for more than, you need to be careful that whatever you're applying for, you can meet that 35-hour per week minimum. There is this other rule called the 3/4 rule that you see on this slide. It's a rule that's designed for like emergencies if you ever fall shy of that. But what you need to know is if you're going into this program, you need to commit to the 35 hours. And what I always tell our clients is if you're falling short of that, you need to call us and we need to talk about it before you start cutting hours. Housing is not required, but it's the one thing that you are required to, excuse me, it's not required, but it's the one thing that you're allowed to charge to the workers. Outside of that, you need to pay for everything, including the travel expenses and the work-related fees. So one of the things to just keep in mind is, in addition to the petition costs, you always have to get people to your organization for the start of the season. You're only getting them home if they're going home and they work the whole season, or they are fired. So for a lot of the workers, especially in hospitality and tourism, they bounce back and forth between seasons, right? They might be in South Dakota in the summer, and then they might go to Florida or to a ski mountain for the winter. If they're going back to a winter property, you don't have to get them to that winter property. But again, you always have to get them to you in South Dakota at the beginning of the season. And I'll cover this at the end, but there's a lot of compliance and retention mandates. This is a legal process, guys. This is legal process, legal mandates, legal obligations. Historically, one of the things that has happened in the H2B visa space is employers have sometimes used non-lawyers and non-law firms for this process, which to me is crazy. We are living in such a heavy-handed enforcement environment. Whether you work with us or someone else, make sure you're working with a law firm on the legal work and only use non-lawyers for recruiting. That is so important to make sure you are not running into problems, you don't go out of business, you don't go to jail, and so on. Okay, I mentioned this a second ago. You are not required under the H2B program to offer housing. However, if you are going to do this program, just from a practical standpoint, you need to be able to answer, where are people going to live and how are they going to get to work? Okay, so you don't have to offer it, but you need to be able to help them understand that. We're going to talk about the competitive recruiting market in a little bit, and just keep this slide in mind when we talk about it, because there's a lot of choices for these workers in terms of employers right now, and you want to make sure that they want to come work for you. Okay, so who qualifies? I covered this earlier. If you look at the bottom of this slide, the three things that the government is looking for, and this is the foundation of this application. This is what decides who gets approved and who gets denied. Is the government wants to see that your revenues, your expenses, and your staffing go up during your busy time of year. And again, we can use contract labor and overtime hours to meet that requirement. Okay. So that's H2B basics. You guys now know everything you need to know. No, I could talk for an hour or more just on the basics piece, but I wanted to give you kind of a highlight of what you need to know. And again, I'm always happy to answer more questions, either at the end of this or separately if you want to talk after. Now, let's get into the trends, because this is where I kind of pivot from. So far, I've talked about all the benefits of H2Bs, right? Our clients that use H2Bs love this program. It is magic when it works. You get these really, really dedicated workers that add culture and add enthusiasm to your organizations. But it's not all sunshine and roses. There's also issues to think about. And so right now, the main issues are all based on demand. We have demand in this numerical cap that I'm going to talk to you about, government delays, the competitive recruiting market, and compliance. But what I see, and I always say, if I get to talk on these webinars, I get to quote myself. Every day, what I continue to realize is, when I'm looking at seasonal properties, not just in the immigration space, but just when I look at seasonal properties that are struggling with staffing, H2B visas continue to be the best seasonal staffing option, as long as you follow my lead on what I'm kind of about to show you, because these are real issues, but there are solutions to just about everything. Okay. Now, the other issue I didn't mention in there is cost, right? So cost is always a big thing for anytime you're thinking about doing anything. I know for me, I always ask when someone's trying to talk about something, of whether I should do something. I always want to know, what's it going to cost me and how much time it's going to take. So to give you some idea, and I can talk to you all about this offline, but what I always tell clients is I would budget about $9,500 per job category. So let's say that you need cashiers, not per person, but I would budget about $9,500 for the group of cashiers. On top of that, I would budget about $1,200 per person on top of the $9,500. That is the real cost of the program. That's not just the legal fees, that's legal fees, government fees, mailing fees, travel costs. About $9,500 for the group of people, plus about $1,200 per person. I'm budgeting high. There are ways to bring that cost down, but if you use that number, it should get you to a pretty good place. In terms of time, you heard me say this, right? It's a 6.5 month process or more, right? Like we start working mid-September for spring start dates. What we do at our office is we try to space it out though, so that we're not asking for everything at once and there's never fire drills. So there are certain parts of the process that take longer than others. But what I always say to our clients is as long as you meet the deadlines that we give you, and as long as you ask questions along the way so that you're not stuck in this endless circle where you're just chasing your own tail, it's a very doable process, but you got to meet the deadlines and ask the questions. But then you need to look at the third piece of this, which is the return on investment, right? If you can't staff appropriately, are you going to have to close on certain days? Are you going to have to close certain parts of your business? Are you going to be paying a fortune for contract labor and overtime? Are you going to be working 1,000,000 hours over the summer and not seeing your family or just getting a chance to breathe? You need to be considering all of this. And, for some of you, it's the right choice to go down the H2B road. For others, it's not. But that's kind of the three things I would consider is the cost, the amount of time, and do you have to close stuff? Like, are you going to be offsetting your costs and then some because you're not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtime or not having to close things and now you can make more revenue, or you have quality of life and you're not having so much turnover with your Americans because everyone has enough support. All right, so consideration number one in terms of the issues is cost. Consideration number two, and we're going back into the petition piece, is this ridiculous supply and demand issue that I hope someday I don't have to talk about. So back in 1990, H2B visas were created. And I always give that timestamp because that was 36 years ago. That was a very long time. And 36 years ago, our elected officials, in order to get this H2B visa law approved, they put in this arbitrary static cap that doesn't change based on unemployment rates nationally or locally or any other metrics. It is a set cap. And what this cap says is that you can see it's based off of winter season and summer season, right? It's all about your start date. So winter season falls between October 1st and March 31st with start dates. For the vast majority of you in South Dakota, most of you have start dates that fall between April 1st and September 30th. Again, right? Like the April, May, June start dates. What the government says is there's only 33,000 out-of-country visas available for winter and 33,000 for summer to just ultimately drill this down. The one other thing is, in addition to out-of-country workers counting against the cap, anyone that's moving from a different visa type, like a J1 to H2B, also counts against this 33,000 number. This is now a year-round issue. This numerical cap used to only be a summer season issue. It's now an issue for winter as well. The people that don't count against the cap, though, are the people who are here already in the country working in winter season or working in the opposite season. Now, what the government's done is they've added in this lottery system as part of this whole demand thing. So you can see here, sorry, to go back one slide, the first day of the government seasons as it relates to winter and summer are October 1st for winter, April 1st for summer. And it's because the government uses an October 1st fiscal year as a start date. So what the government says is that if you have an April 1st start date or an October 1st start date, your petitions will automatically go through a random lottery. And the lottery is completely random. You can see on this slide, completely random. There's nothing that you can do to influence the lottery results. But what they do is they put each of your roles into different groups. So let's say you're filing for maintenance and laundry. Those would be two positions. Each one of them would go through the lottery independently and would probably get different lottery results. The lottery then impacts a couple of things. The lottery impacts, number one, can you get out-of-country workers? And number two, how long will the government take to review your petitions? Now, the government knows that the 33,000 is very insufficient for the total demand. And so what they've done every year, other than in 2020 when COVID hit and unemployment spiked, is they've done cap relief. They've added more visas through this thing called the supplemental cap. The thing with the supplemental cap is it's very unpredictable. We don't know what it's going to say each year. They always put it through the appropriations bill when they fund the government. And so every year it has the chance to look different. And this year, this is what it looked like. It was different. Previously, there was a whole bucket for people from Central America, and that completely disappeared. And this year, they separated into 3 different buckets, one for winter season, one for April start dates, and one for May start dates. But you can see the government knows that this is an issue in the sense that on top of the 66,000 that are available under the H2B cap, they added another 65,000 roughly, right? So they basically doubled the amount of out-of-country visas. The problem is, again, we never know what this is going to look like next year for summer 2027 season. It could look different. I bet it will look similar, but we don't know. And it's still not enough. Most of our April 1st clients, most of our April 1st start date clients were able to get out of country if they wanted them, but some couldn't if they really did very, very poorly in the lottery. And if you have a post April 1st start date, it becomes an impossibility unless you go into May. Long story short, it's not a great thing to rely on this thing. It's very unpredictable. And also it increases the chance of government audits and enforcement actions. So from an advocacy standpoint, right? Because again, I know that there's a lot of lobbying that happens with the Tourism Coalition. This is what I would love to see if our elected officials could do these things. And again, this is at the federal level, not the state. But I would love for them to increase the cap because the supply and demand is just so messed up right now. I wish that they told us about the extra visas earlier. This year we didn't even hear about them until New Year's, and then they took even longer to actually roll it out. There used to be this thing that was called the returning worker exemption, which said that if someone came in with an H2B in one of the last 3 years, they were exempt. And when that returning worker exemption expired back in about 2015, this cap issue became a thing. So it's a very easy fix. The other thing that's happening right now is there's actually a bill that's going through Congress that could potentially solve this for the summer 2027 season. It has this thing called the Certified Seasonal Employer Exemption in it, which would make it so that any organization that has filed H2Bs in one of the last 5 years is exempt for the amount of workers that they filed for. I'm oversimplifying it. But that should also solve the cap if that happens. It actually is pretty far along. There's a chance this actually happens, and you might hear me say, hey, you don't have to worry about this anymore. This is solved. The problem is we've been further along in years past with other solutions. And when I talk to some of our lobbyist contacts that are very high up in this effort, at best, it sounds like a 50-50 proposition that this goes through. There's a good amount of opposition to it. So what I keep telling our clients is we need to work within the framework of where we are today. And so the way to do that and the way to be successful is really to embrace these in-country workers, right? The workers that are working in the opposite season don't count against that numerical cap, and it brings certainty into the program. What happens here, and this is an example of this, is they're working in winter season, let's say from November through May, and then they come work for you from May to November, and these workers are going back and forth, which they're allowed to do for up to 3 years before they have to go home for 2 months, and then they can come back. So we really push the in-country model. We're always happy to try for out-of-country. But to me, anytime we're talking about staffing and making sure that we're giving clients solutions, I want to bring certainty into it, and that's the in-country model. All right, third issue is U.S. Department of Labor delays. This year, the government, the U.S. Department of Labor specifically, they were a month behind in processing from where they were the year before. And what ultimately happened is a lot of in the country, a lot of organizations that had mid-April and May start dates ended up not being able to employ the H2B workers on their first day of the season because of these ridiculous delays. Now, the good news here is, and I will tell you, to me, the Department of Labor delays are probably one of the worst issues of this whole thing because it's not a solvable thing, right? Like with the cap, you can recruit those workers that are already here. For the U.S. Department of Labor, we're stuck with these delays because there's no way to make them move faster. But there's some good news here. Number one is, for the first time that I can remember, a lot of these big lobbying groups are finally pushing Congress to fix these delays. That includes delays at the U.S. Department of Labor and also getting the government notices from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which you need which we need to be able to allow people to work. So there's finally push on this. The other thing is, when the Trump administration passed the big beautiful bill in the spring, it was supposed to include funding for this exact thing, to fund the U.S. Department of Labor so that they didn't have delays. There should be lobbying on this because they have the money, and there's a really easy solution here, which is just hire more people or outsource them more, which they already do outsource, so that these delays are solved. Now, in the meantime, here's how we're getting our clients through the delay issue. We have so much data and information, and so we're able to see when the government starts to fall behind or when they start to speed up. And using that data and information is gold. It's how you make this thing successful and how you don't have surprises. Number two is communicating with your team members, both your Americans and your management team, your executive team, and your American workers, as well as the H2B workers if delays are happening. Finally, the in-country model, that those workers that are working in the opposite season, not only is that helpful for not only is that really helpful for the numerical cap, but it also helps with the U.S. Department of Labor delays, because there's a lot of avenues to get the workers working sooner if you do in-country versus if you do out-of-country. So the in-country model really is a great model. The only side of that, or there's two issues. Number one is if you have longtime workers working for you that have always come to you from out of country, that's not, in country's not great. You want those workers back. But the other thing I'll talk about in a second. Before I do though, just one thing I want to point out here. Getting immigration changes through our elected officials is so difficult, if not impossible. So what I keep telling our clients is we need to make sure we're always looking at how we help lobby, right? Like, how do we help the Tourism Coalition in furthering all of these issues so that our elected officials understand where the pain points are? But also, we need to make sure that you are operating in the reality of where today is, which is what I'm trying to help you understand today. All right. The fourth issue is what I was just getting at. The solution for both the delays and the cap is in-country workers. But the problem is we are looking at a environment where it is more competitive than ever for in-country workers. To understand this, for both summer season and winter season, the most recent seasons that have happened, right? Summer 2027 summer 2026 for you guys, and the winter 25-26 season for the winter organizations. Those had more H2B filings than ever before. And I could say the same thing about the year before that and the year before that. We are operating in an all-time high demand for H2Bs, and the in-country workers absolutely know that. They know that they are the solution to get through a lot of these issues, and they can make it very difficult for you. They can back out of offers, they can disappear on you. In terms of the solution from an advocacy standpoint, the problem would be solved if the cap gets solved. Because if you're able to bring in out-of-country workers and you only use in-country because you want to, all of a sudden the workers lose that advantage, and it would solve this whole thing. But in the meantime, here are the solutions, and you can see the Seasonal Connect logo on that because Seasonal Connect is a great staffing solution. It's a software platform that you can find workers and find opposite season partners. But here's how we guide our clients through this. You need to be really active in recruiting. You can't just assume that because you're filing for H2Bs, the workers are going to want to come to you. You need to treat this as if it's a very big piece of your recruiting initiative and really put the effort behind it. I counsel our clients at this point to over-recruit to make sure that if people drop out, you can replace them. You need to create opposite season recruiting relationships. Get to know your colleagues and peers at opposite season organizations so that they can help recruit workers with you and be the voice on the ground when they're with the opposite season organization. Use all of your resources. Use all of the knowledge that you have in recruiting. Use all of your resources available to you in terms of relationships that you might have at winter properties. Use Seasonal Connect, use recruiters, use whatever you need to make sure that you get people. Um, if you have an existing H2B program, your staff are your best recruiters. Ask your staff to help bring their friends. Just make sure you treat them well so they want to do that. Sell your organization during recruiting, right? Don't be shy. Tell people about how great it is in South Dakota. Tell people how great you treat them. Help them understand cost of living. So even if wages might be higher somewhere else, they can understand they might actually be making more at the end of the day if they come to you, if they come work with you. We also do a huge event that I'll talk about at the very end that I encourage you to consider coming to. It's next month, but organizations from around the country, literally even from Alaska and Hawaii, come in, and it's a great way to meet other organizations and really get ahead of things. So how's it really going, right? Like, let me give you kind of what's happening on the ground. I would say right now, we are seeing one of the highest, like I would say things are at an all-time high success in terms of our client base. We've been able to bring a lot of predictability to the petitions. So even when government delays get worse, it's never surprises. Most amount of government requests, like the petitions are going so smoothly right now. The administration continues to show value in this program. And I think it's a very safe program for the next couple of years. And it's gotten so popular with winter organizations that it's opened up a lot of opportunities for summer organizations, which again, most of you fall into that bucket. In terms of challenges, it's what I've covered, right? The timing and deadlines in the process, we need to make sure that we meet those deadlines so that you have the opportunity. Demands at an all-time high for everybody. The recruiting for in-country workers, if you're not active, you're going to struggle. Unpredictability of cap relief. If you're trying to get out of country workers, it can be very difficult and very stressful because it is unpredictable. And, the Department of Labor delays are the bane of, I would say, my existence. But again, the last several years now have been so successful and the clients are just so happy. And I think it's because the data and the information available to us that we then make available to the clients and we use as part of strategy has really opened up a lot of their eyes and made this a much more predictable program. Okay, so I want to basically end with this, and I want to help you understand why this is so important, why you think I'm so grateful that you're here, and why it's so important that you're here, because the immigration climate right now is wild. I truly feel that we are watching and experiencing a reshaping of U.S. immigration that my kids and my grandkids are going to be feeling. This is not like a next 2-year thing. This is a generational thing. And the problem is you are already struggling. I said this when I was at the tourism conference. South Dakota, it is wild what you guys are experiencing, right? Unemployment is 4.3% nationally. In South Dakota, as of May, which is the latest figures out, you're at 2.3%, which means there are no people, as any economist will tell you, there are no people in South Dakota that want to work that aren't already working. And it was already a struggle, right? And so you can't find people. All of these other things are going away. And here's where I'm going with this. In terms of who comprises the hospitality and tourism workforce, you have the American citizens, of course, right? And then you have internationals. And internationals in hospitality, it's crazy how much of them are from other countries. In hotels, non-US citizens, which includes green card holders, housekeeping, over a third of the people in the country are from other countries. Or excuse me, over a third of housekeepers in the country are from other countries. Laundry, a quarter. Cooks, a quarter. Maintenance, almost a quarter. And the list goes on. You are in an industry that is dependent on these workers, whether they're American citizens, these international workers, J1s, H2Bs, humanitarian. They might be year-round visas and green card holders. But here's what's going on, and here's the thing that I find absolutely terrifying as you're all trying to staff. So first of all, there's 2.3% unemployment rate in South Dakota. Again, that is wild. Second of all, In terms of internationals, J1 visas are in turmoil. I'll talk about that in a second. H2B visa holders continues to be are a huge part of your industry, and as I've said a few times now, continues to be endorsed by this administration as well as people in the House and Senate and locally. But then we get into humanitarian. Temporary protected status is a status that's available for people who the country, our government has said it's unsafe for them to go home for various reasons. Since taking office for the second term, the Trump administration has now rescinded 15 of the 17 countries. This is a program where the majority of people in the country on TPS are in hospitality. Right now, every one of the things that's been rescinded is under court challenge. This month, we should hear about 2 of them because it's gotten all the way up to the Supreme Court. But if the Supreme Court sides with the administration, this is going to wreak havoc on the hospitality and tourism industry nationwide. Humanitarian parole, that was a Biden administration initiative that is now gone. Again, the majority of those people were in hospitality. Asylees and refugees, these are people who are claiming that they're afraid to go home. Both of those have historically come with work authorization where they are allowed to work for any employer. Sorry, I should have said that as well. Humanitarian parole and temporary protected status also, they show up with a work card, they can work for any employer. Refugees and asylees, these programs are essentially on hold, at least as it relates to work authorization. A lot of these people no longer can work. Again, a lot of these people are in hospitality and tourism. Year-round visa holders, very difficult to get these visas through for hospitality and tourism. There's some exceptions to that, but it's not a great kind of staffing solution in its entirety when you're trying to fill line level roles and try to fill it with a lot of people. For green card holders, there's even an impact. For the first time in over 50 years, more people left the country than came in 2025. That's wild. There are people that are choosing to leave because they don't want to be here anymore. And again, that is going to create staffing holes. Finally, you can see this last point. For the undocumented population, which has had so much of a focus on them and so much crackdown, a lot of contract labor has historically used undocumented people. And we can take whatever political role and viewpoint on that. But the fact of the matter is, as the crackdown on undocumented people has happened, it is going to cause some really big problems with getting contract labor because it is going to absolutely wreck that industry. I mentioned this before. What I am hearing and seeing on a daily basis with our clients is that the J1 visa program is in turmoil. I am hearing about an incredible amount of denials with people at the consulates and embassies. I'm hearing about 6 to 9 month delays for those people that are getting through. I was actually interviewed by a newspaper yesterday on this exact issue because there's been so many reports of just J1 visas holders not coming. I've now heard of 3 agencies that are no longer sending people to the United States because of these issues, as well as a lot of these kids or their parents aren't sending people to the United States anymore because they're seeing so much negative immigration, so many negative immigration stories on the news. You need to be careful with J1s. I think a lot of the agencies are not telling you the whole truth. Carmen and I were talking about this. Right now, I think a lot of them are blaming it on the World Cup, which is not what the real issue is. It's that this program is not one that this administration has ever liked. They've actually spoken out against it, and we're seeing that happen in real time. We don't do J1s in my office, just in full disclosure, but I just want to say this out loud. The J1 program is a very important piece of the puzzle with staffing. Like, we need this thing to work. But you need to be really careful right now. If you are reliant on J1s in any of your jobs, minimally for the next couple of years, you need to look at how you're going to solve the staffing in those roles if you can't get J1s. And that's where you need to look at your American initiatives, and that's where you need to look at H2Bs. We have a lot of clients that are adding H2Bs for the first time, or adding H2Bs in if they are overly dependent on J1s and they wouldn't be able to operate if they don't get those workers. And that is my advice to you, is do not be reliant on them. Because where we're heading, and some of our clients are already seeing this, there's not going to be enough workers. There's going to be the competition. It's going to drive up wages. We also are seeing a lot of fast actions with this administration. They're so good at that. And the problem is, you heard me say this before, right? H2Bs, we start in mid-September for spring start dates. We are not able to start late. So we need to be planning ahead, because if the government acts quickly, or if you find out at the last minute you can't get J1s, we can't pivot at that point to H2B. So you need to be really proactive with this. All right, couple of final things, and then I'll open it up to questions. Compliance is so important, guys. I mentioned this earlier. You need to be careful about who you work with. You need to work with a law firm on the petitions, because there's so many compliance measures, and so many ways that they can punish you and go after you. This is a very big issue. That we are seeing more compliance checks than I have seen in about 15 to 20 years. And you need to be really careful here, because they're actively looking, and you need to make sure that you're following the rules. I say this to our clients every day. You don't need to be worried about the government coming, but you do need to be prepared. And I'm saying that on H2Bs, on J1s, on if you do any other visa types, they are actively looking, they being the government, and you need to be ready for this. All right. So let me give you some final tips before we open it up to questions. Number one, don't put your head in the sand. Don't just assume that everything is going to be the same, because things are really shifting. Don't base staffing on J1 visa holders right now. You can try to use it as a cultural element, because I know there's some really great benefits to having that culture at your organization. But if you're having staffing holes, do not look at J1s and say, this is the way we're going to get through that. Ramp up your American hiring initiatives. I think, having diversity in staffing, including Americans, is crucial. And I'm saying that as an immigration lawyer. Turn to H2B visas for staffing shortages, because this is a safe avenue, but you need to plan ahead. Talk to me now, because we are going to be hitting the ground running in mid-September. The other thing is, and I was telling Carmen this before we started, we at Pabian Law, one of our biggest issues right now as a firm is capacity. I'm so thankful that our clients seem to absolutely love us, but we don't have a lot of spots left for summer 2027 petitions. So if you are interested in working with us, please, 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 please reach out now. Not only is it time to plan, but also I would love to work with you guys. I really love working with all of our clients in South Dakota, but please reach out now. Okay, some of these are repetitive, but just a couple of other things. Don't rely on contract labor to fill holes. Understand the impacts of all these things going away or being impacted. Most importantly, understand your property specific options, plan ahead, and ensure that you're staffed appropriately while never forgetting about compliance. All right, again, for the vast majority of you, if not for all of you, we start work in mid-September. And this is the staffing summit that I mentioned. It's July 20th to 22nd. We are closing registration in about 2 weeks. I know it's during the heart of a lot of your seasons, but this thing is magic. If you use H2B visas, even if you use a different provider, you are welcome. I should say, even if you don't use H2Bs, you're welcome. But I've seen this every year. The organizations that come to this are like 3 to 4 years ahead of everybody else in terms of seasonal staffing, H2Bs, J1s, and so on. So if you are interested, you can see it's gotten so big that we have its own website, but if you go to staffingsummit.com, you can see more about that. All right, so we have a little more than 5 minutes for questions. So Carmen, I can't see any of you or any of the chats. So I don't know if there are any questions that have been asked or how you want to do this, but I'll let you run the Q&A piece, Carmen.
So far, I haven't seen any questions come in, Keith. I just wanted to let the rest of the group know that when we do our annual trek to DC, working with the United States Travel Association, every year we are asking our congressmen to increase that cap, because we know how critical it is. But it does not hurt for them to hear from all of you as well that this needs to happen. So, whenever we ask for a little support and reaching out to them, that's a good one to know.
Thanks, Carmen.
And we have a small enough group that I can just open the mic, and then everybody can go ahead and ask their own question. I think I can open them all. Let's see try to open your mics, guys. Will it allow you?
Can you hear me, Carmen?
Yep.
All right. Keith, I do have a question. Previous management companies I've worked with, I know housing isn't required, but I also know working with H2Bs in the past, that's the most attractive offer. With H2Bs is that, yep, my employer has my housing set up. I don't gotta worry about that. With Seasonal Connect, that's just recruiting, correct?
It is, although there are a couple of housing providers that work nationally that they offer discounts if you're a Seasonal Connect member. But it's funny, when we started Seasonal Connect, we thought that we would have housing listings in there. And then I realized how hard it is to find housing. So we backed off and we partnered with a few different companies. So there are a couple of providers in there. The other thing that I've learned is because when we do the staffing summit, we do a lot of data. And for me, I always bring a notepad up when I'm leading some of the sessions because I learned so much from it. But one of the things that we ask is like, how many of you have your own housing? Of the roughly hundreds and hundreds of organizations that we work with nationally, only about 50% own their own housing. Most have agreements or arrangements with like local apartment complexes or things like that. So there are ways around it. The problem is where I think HVs get so hard sometimes is there's a chicken and the egg scenario where we have to start work so early, again, mid-September. And normally the housing isn't really open yet, right? And you might be able to make some inroads, but you have to take a kind of leap of faith that it's going to be there. And I think that's probably the scariest part that I've seen because I'd say everyone has always figured it out. It's just like they're not always ready when we have to kick this process off.
Okay. So Seasonal Connect, that's just a website or is that actually a recruiting company? Like I've worked with MTL International previously. Is Seasonal Connect a recruiting website or an actual company within itself?
Different from the normal recruiter. So I always describe it as like a mix between Indeed and Match.com, where there are workers in there. So you can post jobs, you can search for workers directly, and you can find opposite season employers. That's the Match.com piece. It's very inexpensive. Like I just saying that out loud. So a lot of our clients kind of use it in conjunction with other things. A lot of them have moved away from the traditional recruiters, like the one you mentioned, because there's other reasons to move away from things like that. But other clients of ours, they'll use, Pabian Law for the petitions, a traditional recruiter for recruiting, or Pabian Law for petitions and a traditional recruiter and Seasonal Connect, or Pabian Law for petitions and then they do their own recruiting. So there's no right way to do it, but Seasonal Connect is definitely a different model. We've talked about maybe adding in like a little bit more of a on the boots thing, but what we found is our clients have largely been successful, like with just giving them that opening in and giving them that agency to find people.
On the transportation piece, South Dakota is not well known for public transportation at all. Some hospitality industries I've worked with, they provide, a company van or whatever it is to transport H2Bs, and sometimes that's not an option. How does that weigh into the visas when it is reliant on public transportation or walking? I know some companies I've worked with, if we provide bikes, that's the right answer. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, great question. So the way I look at this is it's not about the visa, it's about you selling the property, right, to the workers. And I think it's all about the total package and like how far they have to go, if it's a bike or if they have to walk, or is it main roads? Is it, do they feel safe? It's part of the whole assessment. So I think that the workers, I've seen that a lot of them really more want to, they value being closer to the work site. And so even if they have to walk or take a bike, if it's closer and they have a little bit more autonomy, or like that work-life balance, it helps. But I think it really depends. I continue to see it's the total package. It's what it's what, like, if you have better housing and it's further away, and or if you don't charge as much for housing, even if it's further away, and even if they have to take a car, or if you can talk up the cost of living or career advancement or whatever, how well you treat the workers. Like, there's a lot of other things out there, and it's just really looking at the total scope of it, and how you're going to position yourself on that piece.
Okay. The last question, do you help? So I'm a new property. I've been open a year. But
Congrats.
previous hospitality companies I've worked with partner with places in Colorado that have the ski resorts in the wintertime. Things like that. Do you help us build those relationships with
Yes.
with the opposite seasons?
Yes, and it's magic. It's amazing. Yep.
I think that was my last question.
You asked some great questions. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I should also say, because those were great questions that often lead to more questions, I don't ever charge for phone calls, so or emails or whatever. So if you guys have questions after this, you have my contact information is right on the slide. So
Jennifer, do you guys use any on the Sioux Files or the Rapid City side? Or
So Stephanie is actually our general manager at our Hyatt Place in Rapid City. And that hotel just opened. Our Canopy just opened a year and a half ago. So we haven't used H2Bs or any program like that. And definitely looking into it as an option. Both Rapid City and Sioux Falls have a 1.9% unemployment rate now.
I talk all over the country. You have the lowest unemployment rate of anyone that I've seen. It's got to be the lowest in the country, if not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and actually, I believe, Keith, you and I were talking, we do have at least one South Dakota property that's attending your big summit. Hopefully we'll have more, but it would probably be a good follow-up after your summit to maybe talk to those attendees too and see how they enjoyed it. I think it's Tim Johnson for one is going, but
that event is literally magic. It's amazing.
Will a copy of this presentation be available to us, or can we get some of these slides that tell us about the summit and stuff?
Yes, I'll be sending the deck out after we're done.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole agenda is on that website. So if you go to staffingsummit.com, it's all there.
I already started looking at it, Jennifer.
Okay, good. I see Michelle's on the line too. Michelle, did you have any questions? Nope. Okay, this is also going to be on our YouTube site. So if you wanted to rewatch the entire webinar. Keith, do you have anything else to add?
No, I thank you guys. I really appreciate Carmen, thank you. I really appreciate you asking me to do this. So thank you.
I really enjoyed your presentation during the tourism conference. I did not get to your follow-up one, but I heard really good things about it. So hopefully you'll be able to come back sometime soon.
Yeah, it was a blast. So absolutely.
Good. And also, just so everyone who's here, our next webinar is going to be on July 9th at 11 o'clock. And that one is about the signs of human trafficking. So those of you who are in hotels and stuff, very pertinent information. And so hopefully you can join us for that as well. So with that, unless there are any other questions, thanks, Michelle. No questions there. We will let you all go. And we really appreciate you attending today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carmen.